panel to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart is my friend Antti Korhonen, who's the global lead on the future of education. He's the co-founder of Spark EDU, SparkMind VC, and XEDU. XEDU is an accelerator that has taken 80 companies from 18 countries focused on education. I also have my friend Jon Baron, who is a serial entrepreneur, co-founder of Open Games, a business advisor to Peninsula, which is the head of Barcelona Game BCN. And you guys have a super fascinating success rate as an accelerator and an incubator. You've taken 50% of the companies that have come through your program to publishing arrangements, which is fascinating. We're going to talk about that. And finally, Katrina Kurt, you're an entrepreneur. You're a top voice on LinkedIn for entrepreneurship, and your company, AQ22, was recently accepted to the prestigious Silicon Valley version of Plug and Play, and specifically the fintech track there. So, we're going to keep this panel moving fast because this might be the most interesting panel I've ever led. We have Joan has to leave in like a few minutes, so we're gonna keep the pace up here. Guys, I'm going to start with an analogy, which I hope we can get up here on the screen. The analogy is that the global startup accelerator network is like the farm leagues of professional sports. And that basically you start at a certain level and you keep migrating up until you get to the very peak of this competitive ecosystem. We're getting more and more competitive with each year. Each new accelerator is increasing the standards on the companies. We have someone from Spain, and not just Spain, Barcelona. Joan, what do you think of this analogy?
First of all, thank you. Thanks to invite me, and thanks to come here. To go deeper and faster. For me, it's a good analogy, but for example, Y Combinator, for me, we can say in terms of reputational, Y Combinator, of course, is the most reputational, but when you go deeper, you have to analyze in terms of accelerator, incubator, so depends on you are putting focus on more prototyping or at the end of or more future moment for the company. And go deeper depends on the area that you are focused on it. For example, we do video game. No, we are put effort all on video game industry, so we are not we are not like for the startups. We are creating teams and companies for content creators more than problem solution startups.
Let me take that point. So what you're saying is that the market is getting more and more competitive, and these days, I think all three of us, I'm actually also representing a life science incubator in Stockholm. We've got life science, we've got video games, we've got education. These are more specific, more competitive niches that accelerators are catering to because, I could argue, we have increasing competition in the startup ecosystem. We're all competing to get to these top spots. For example, Katrina, you're going to Silicon Valley soon. You've just been accepted to the prestigious Silicon Valley version of Plug and Play Accelerator. How many companies from the batch that you did here in Lithuania got into that program? What percent of what number?
Yeah, so hello everybody. It's so nice to see all of you here at Startup Fair. So out of the 11, 12 startups that we started, 2 startups are going to the Silicon Valley's Gold program. And then also for the FinTech batch, where we also got in, we had around 1,000 companies and 18 got in, and we're one of them.
Okay, super interesting. And Antti, I know you guys are also part of a big global network of accelerators at XEDU. Tell us about how many companies apply to your accelerator and how many of them get in. How many are you dealing with from a competitive standpoint?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to say ačiū to Innovation Lithuania because of Innovation Lithuania support for Lithuanian edtech startups and startups from around the world. We, together with Civita, are starting the first education-focused accelerator, Edu Challenger here. So if there are any edtech startups here who have not applied to the program yet, so educhallenger.com. So coming now to your question, around 100 to 200 apply to one of our cohorts, and we take in approximately 10. I would also like to challenge your picture, because especially with vertical accelerators, like specialized in education. When you go into a specialized accelerator, so the level of conversation that the startup founders are having there with each other, like for example in a fintech accelerator. If you go to a generic accelerator, so basically you are explaining how your business works to others, whereas in a specialized accelerator, everyone is sparring each other. Also, edtech VCs are a very specialized genre. So we introduce the companies to every edtech VC that there is in the world. So kind of like the level of conversation, the level of networking, the level of ecosystem, kind of like we work with Civita here to build the local ecosystem with the Lithuanian government in education.
And okay, so you said 10 are accepted out of 100. That's about 10% acceptance rate. John, what percent of companies that apply to your accelerator get in at this point?
Last year, for example, we have 190 teams that apply, and we only accept 6.
6 out of 190.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I can speak for the MasterCard Lighthouse program. Each year we have hundreds of applications, and we accept about 40 of the companies that apply. Now, here's a question for all of us. Are we increasing the size of our accelerator class? Are you increasing it? Or is it still 6 companies this year, last year, the year before?
I don't want to increase because I prefer quality than quantity, and I prefer to assure the publishing deals.
Yes,
and
okay.
at the same time, sorry.
No, perfect. So you're not increasing. What about
Yeah.
Antti? What about you? Are you increasing or keeping it the same?
We are not increasing the size of the cohort. If we go to another continent, we can have there another...
This is the key, right? We're going to new countries. That's why we're all here in Lithuania right now, because we see new talent that we want to be basically in person to at least some extent. What percent of your meetings are in person, Antti, as an example of the whole cohort?
As the Finnish ski jumper Matti Nykänen used to say, 50-60. So we do believe to kind of like personal touch in the program and the personal sparring that happens and the personal networking that happens. Especially the first 2.5 weeks are very important. Then in the middle of the program, at the end of the program. So I would say 50-60.
50-60. And Joan, what about you guys?
Yeah, 50%.
In the MasterCard Lighthouse program, we have about 30% of our meetings are in person. Now, Katrina, you are going to Silicon Valley for the plug-and-play accelerator. We all know YC is famously an in-person version of these sort of training grounds for startups. Is your program required to be in person?
So actually 90% of the program will be online, but people will be still coming to the office. That's where the whole ecosystem is growing very fast, so you want to be there.
Yeah,
and that's where the VCs are. So if you want to be close to a fintech VC, why not go to Silicon Valley when you have the opportunity?
And I just want to reflect, like zoom out and think about these answers so far. We've been saying that we're keeping our class sizes the same. Is it fair to say the applications are growing each year? Like there's more and more companies applying to our programs. I know that's the case with the MasterCard Lighthouse program. I think this is getting at that same kind of pyramid of competitive dynamics, where despite the fact that there is more and more interest in this space, something you told me earlier today, John, there is a limited amount of market attention that is capable of being distributed across all of these startups. There's a limited market size. The market might be growing slowly, but the reality is this is just getting more and more competitive for startups, which is why joining an accelerator, joining an incubator, going to a farm league, getting practice with other teammates is so important for startups if you want to be successful in today's world. So I think that is kind of where I see this analogy going. And of course, part of us all being in specialized sectors, whether it's life science or education or video games and entertainment, I think these are all even more examples of competitive dynamics. So let's go to geography as well. Geography is another niche. It's another way in which the competition is increasing. All of us have chosen Lithuania as a place where either the Lighthouse program is or Antti, you guys have just started working with Lithuania, and I believe all of us have contracts here to some extent. Joan, why did you choose Lithuania?
Because we know Barcelona, as most of the people know, Barcelona is one of the most important hubs in video game industry, and we know how to grow the ecosystem. But of course, you need the ingredients, no? And the ingredients sometimes it's companies, for example, big companies and small companies, universities, government, no? And we notice that here in Lithuania, have the ingredients, can help Lithuanian country to grow that, like we
support,
did it in
support from the government.
Yeah.
That's absolutely on display here. Antti, you're from another new Nordic country. I like to say Lithuania, along with the rest of the Baltics, are part of the new Nordics, and I say that as somebody who lives in Sweden. When you think about Lithuania in comparison to other European countries, how do you think the startups or the ecosystem here is different?
Well, first of all, we have been running the XEDU accelerator in Finland as the only accelerator of EdTech in the Nordics. And now we are bringing the kind of like accelerator also to the new Nordics together with Civitta. The kind of like the startups that are coming from this region, so they need to be born global. So if we are also running an accelerator in Italy. So in Italy, you can kind of like build an edtech startup, kind of like focusing to first 5 years only to Italian market. But you can't really do it if you want to build a startup, kind of like scale up here. You need to start thinking being global from day one. But then when you have kind of like a new the Nordic countries which have kind of like low, for example, power distance between people. So it's easy for you as a startup entrepreneur to go to government officials, to go to city schools and say, hey, can we start testing this? It's something that is much more difficult. So it's...
Well, I love that.
Vilnius is a good place to build edtech.
I love low power distance. I think that's a super critical concept, and it's something that startups get really well. Each employee owns equity in their businesses, and that's a very good analogy for our more sharing societies out here. Okay, Katrina, you are presenting a Baltic startup persona to the world now. You're moving to Silicon Valley. What are the traits of Baltic entrepreneurs that seem to really resonate with investors, prospective customers, and employees?
Listen, so we had recently a call with Sequoia Capital. Some of you know, one of the biggest VCs in the world. And one thing that really stood out about our team was the hustle mentality, how we can make a lot of things happen just from, very little resources. So I think this kind of ambitious mindset that we have here in the Baltics, we are trying to make something out of everything, and that's what VCs appreciate, actually, outside.
I heard a VC say, my Estonian entrepreneurs chew the same piece of bubble gum for the whole week, and we love that. It's efficiency of...
It's kind of, shows how much we can do with just a few simple things. So that's what they appreciate worldwide as well.
I love that. Now, let's pivot back to accelerators, these global talent scouting organizations. Antti, what do you say to the skeptics that say, you know what, it's only the startups that can't make it on their own that have to join an accelerator? You have an adverse selection bias with the companies that even apply in the first place.
Well, of course, companies can do it by themselves, and it's great that there are companies that can do it by themselves. But when you kind of like put yourself through this kind of drilling for 4 months, where you kind of like make sure that every part of your business is correct, where you make sure that your product market fit starts to get there, then the scaling, it kind of like helps you to prevent some of the mistakes that you would be making otherwise. So it helps you actually to accelerate through the valley of death. You get to the other side where you get the revenue from the customers faster than you most probably otherwise would, which is the value that the accelerators are giving.
And Katrina, what is some concrete value you've gotten out of the plug-and-play accelerator?
Yeah, so I think, first of all, before I talk about that, I would like to say that when you are a part of an accelerator, it really comes down to yourself. If you take all the things out of it for yourself, right? So some startups were a part of Plug and Play, and I think not all of them took the same amount as we did. So first of all, that's what you have to start doing. And what was really beneficial for us, of course, corporate partners, connections, all kinds of introductions with VCs, people outside of Europe. So that's the biggest thing. And I think when we were applying for the FinTech batch as well, we were looking specifically for those finance connections and introductions.
And so you would consider money raised to be like a KPI of an accelerator that's very important to you?
One of the KPIs for sure.
I've heard it's impossible to forecast the ROI of a social interaction, but certainly accelerators are bringing lots more social interactions. So if we believe that there's some sort of linear relationship between social interactions and value, accelerators are obviously also increasing the surface area of luck, to use a Silicon Valley phrase.
Let me comment on that social interaction. So we were running our first accelerator program in 2016. And the CEOs from that cohort, still today, they are sparring and they are helping each other. If you didn't attend, then you would have been missed all that kind of like free sparring, free mentorship, free opening of doors, customer doors that has come through those interactions.
That's really interesting. So I'm going to I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about what I'm doing here. So I've got the MasterCard Lighthouse program. We've had over 300 companies come through and meet with banks and investors. We've had over $1 billion of capital raised by our companies. So that's one side. We're actually not, we consider ourselves not an accelerator or an incubator, by the way, but it's just a partnership platform.
We need to talk.
We need to talk. But on the other hand, I run a pure incubator, which is for life science companies. And this pure incubator actually doesn't have this component that you're talking about. What we do is we keep our scientific founders very much in our lab space, and we are trying to basically develop them into successful businesses, and we're trying to do this with our own resources. And so one of the things that I have learned studying this space is that within certain industries, and Joan was just here talking about his 50% success rate within entertainment. The same is true for life sciences. You can have very, very high hit rates if you get basically the science of incubation correct. So some of the most famous life science incubators in the history of the world, whether it's Flagship Pioneering, which developed the Moderna company, or if it's Arch Venture Partners, which developed Illumina, or if it's Kleiner Perkins, which developed Genentech, over 50% success rate from each of those incubators. And I think it's a fascinating idea that there can be a science of taking startups from earliest inception point to success. Antti, I'm wondering, as a person building one of these accelerators, do you think that there are things that we can identify now in our data sets that predict founder success more than just like a random throw at the dartboard?
Well, the one thing that we are really looking into is the kind of the team, and that there are kind of like competencies from several areas in the team, and kind of like what is the track record of the team, because in edtech you quite often you actually need to pivot. You need to pivot your kind of like market, or you need to pivot some of the product offerings. So when you have a good team there, they are the ones that are capable of doing that. In incubation, yeah, it's very true what you were saying about the incubation, getting from idea to product. So especially in kind of like deep tech and deep sciences. So kind of like working in the lab so far when the product is ready to hit the market, but then it goes to scaling, and then once again the accelerators come in.
Let me just ask you real quick, how many data points are you guys evaluating when a startup applies? Like of your questions, how many data points are they filling in?
25 approximately,
yeah.
But I would say that 5 of those are the ones that we are.
And that's related to team, like you were saying.
One of them is the team, yeah.
Yeah, so at Nordic Science Capital, we're actually evaluating 48 different dimensions of the science that we're backing, and I think that's where you can see the really rigorous science of incubation at play. We have 6 different risk parameters. We're evaluating every opportunity on a very quantitative scale on these basically 50 different categories. And I think Joan was telling us earlier that his team uses something like 15 dimensions that they're evaluating. I think we're going to get, as an industry, better and better at identifying the quantitative predictors of success. Think back to the sports analogy. You know, whether it's how fast can you run 100 meters, how high can you jump, we're going to start applying those same general principles of athletics to startups. And as we get more mature, as we develop our industry more, that will be a clearer and clearer indication of success. But kind of going toward, I call this the science of talent, right? Antti, do you think that we are in a kind of zero-sum or like only slowly expanding world of talent, as we were suggesting earlier? Or do you think startup innovation is different, where we're actually creating brand new markets and industries, we actually don't have this fixed 24 hours of attention, and that we can, in fact, have more and more success cases each year, that basically we don't need to keep the size of our accelerators the same?
A very interesting question. So I would say that in general, kind of like the growth of the market, if there is kind of like growth in that market segment, that gives you an indication is that a zero-sum game. Even in shrinking markets, you can still have great teams, but how many can you have them there? That is really another question. And then when it comes to talent, so actually good edtech companies can speed up also the talent creation.
Okay, I want to ask Katrina a question about when you think about a good accelerator versus a great accelerator, or a good program versus a great program, what are some of the defining characteristics?
I would imagine that a good accelerator has all the same things as a great one, but the great one is always the one which can give you more contacts, more connections. So we already talked about that, you know, the connectivity within the ecosystem that you're trying to build. And that can really help you to get to your next level, whether that's, you know, fundraising or, you know, finding your first pilot clients. So that would be.
So now, can you ask me a question from the MasterCard Lighthouse perspective? You're in fintech. What questions do you have to me as a builder of that program?
So what does it take to get into your program?
Well, I would say there's two things that we're looking for primarily. It's, can you work with our bank partners like SEB, who I'm very grateful for offering me the chance to come on this this amazing stage. So that's actually the most important thing for us. Do you have a great case with our banking partners? And we evaluate very carefully the partnership proposal that you make. And then, of course, also it's like, can you benefit MasterCard and the rest of our partners? So that's why we're not really an accelerator, I would say, is because we're very much looking specifically at the partnership dimension. But I think this is something we've learned after 6 years of trial and error. And we didn't even ask that question in the early days. As we've gotten more competitive, and as we understood more what exactly we offer to the value of the startups, we've emphasized more on evaluating these paragraphs of text. Now, bringing us to, how much more time do we have, actually? I don't have a timer. Five more minutes? Oh, perfect. I can't see it. Yeah, that's true. So I actually, I want to ask a question about your future in Lithuania, Antti. You guys are here on some sort of contract. When does that end?
2026. But at the same time, we want to be together with Civita, together with Innovation Lithuania, and together with the Minister of Education of Lithuania. We want to be developing the edtech ecosystem here as a whole, so that it is easy for the edtech startups also in 2027 to be developing their products here. If there is a good ecosystem, so that carries. And then every now and then, it's good to have a program also here.
Yeah. And do you expect to have some sort of graduation from one program to another? For example, the Lithuanian companies, would they move to Finland at a certain point? If, for example, Finland, I heard, is one of the best countries in the world for education. So maybe that's sort of like the peak of
But what about the weather? What about the weather?
Slush. No. Actually, coming back to your picture that you had in the beginning, so I would say that in the vertical kind of like niche that education is, well, education is actually not a niche. It is 3 times big. Education market is 3 times bigger than the whole ICT. So you take all the information, communication, and technology companies. So they are 2.53 trillion euros a year, the turnaround. In education, it is 8 trillion. So education is a huge industry. And I would say that but in this accelerating education and having the contacts and having the links, so the accelerator program that we are running in Finland, the companies that are joining EduChallenger here that we are running together with Civita, so the contacts and even the coaches, mentors will be for good deal the same. So I would say that in the field of education, we are there at the Champions League. We are the ex-educator, not Y Combinator, but ex-educator of edtech startups.
Yes, and I think geographies do develop specific competences, like we talk about Finland with education, but of course the King Kong of all ecosystems is Silicon Valley. So Katrina, you're going there for how long, and then would you like to move there permanently with your company? Tell us a little bit about your thoughts there.
Yeah, so for the beginning, we're going for 2 months to go with the program and see what Silicon Valley is all about one more time. And then, of course, in the future, you know, banks and credit unions and similar financial institutions is our market. So we will probably have to be located somewhere near New York on the other side. So.
Yep.
Actually, we have had 3 companies from Silicon Valley edtech companies applying to our accelerator, and we accepted 2 of those.
Yeah, and I will say from the Nordic Science Capital standpoint, our best companies are destined for the US. We just have to take them there. The capital is 10 times cheaper. That's where all the customers are of our best and most innovative companies. And we just have to respect the Champions League dynamics here. That is where the Champions League is from our perspective. One final question, though. I think an area where Europe clearly has an edge over the US is when it comes to impact and thinking more broadly. So Antti, you guys are obviously in the education space. Are you looking for different things when you look at impact founders and impact companies than just a normal for-profit founder?
Well, actually, we make every one of our companies to develop their own impact metrics. And also, we are seeing in the applications that there are some of the founding teams have a very strong kind of like impact focus from the beginning. Education is one of those places where it's good and quite easy actually to find the positive impact metrics, except you are educating for gaming, kind of like betting, for example. There might be some negative social impacts. But yeah, social impact. And we are also seeing kind of like founders who have made an exit, and now they are thinking that what they want to do with their living. So then actually building an education company is a good way to make a mark for the future.
And I would say that one of the things that I love about working in this ecosystem is the fact that our partners like SCB and everyone else that we work with here is obviously very interested in this topic of impact. It's why the MasterCard Lighthouse program, which started working with FinTech, has actually built an entirely separate parallel impact track. And I would encourage any founder working on impact tech related to financial inclusion, climate tech, and sustainability to please reach out to us and see how we can help you through our partnerships. That's it for us. Thank you guys so much for your attention, and talk to you soon.
Achoo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vincent. Fantastic job.